In the section and next, you will learn what lists are and how to start working with the elements in a list. Lists allow you to store sets of information in one place, whether you have just a few items or millions of items. Lists are one of the Python's most powerful features, readily accessible to new programmers, and they tie together many important concepts in programming. What is a list? A list is a collection of items in particular order, and you can make a list that includes the letters of the alphabet, the digits from 0 to 9, the names of all the people in your family. You can put anything you want to into list. And the items in your list don't have to be related in any particular order or way. So because a list is usually contains more than one element, it's a good idea to make the name of your list plural, such as instead of my special, you can write my special numbers like this, or letters, digits, or names. So in Python, these square braces indicate a list, and individual elements in the list are separated by commas here. And let's create a simple example of a list that contains a few kinds of car models or car makes. So car makes here, and here we will enter, for example, Mercedes, Mercedes here, as Benz here, and we will enter the BMW, and we will enter Volkswagen, Honda, Kia here, Hyundai here, and so on. So here we will print this car makes here. And as you can see here, we have Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Honda, Kia, and Hyundai. So if you ask Python to print a list, Python returns this representation of the list, including the square braces here. So because this isn't the output you want your users to see, let's learn how to access the individual items in a list. Lists, and this is why we draw this drawing here, and we will explain on this list here. So we first created my special numbers here, as you can see here. So this associated with this here. Now let's get here. That's it. So lists are ordered collections, so you can access any elements in a list by telling the position or index of the item desired. So to access an element in a list, write the name of the list followed by the index of the item enclosed in square braces. So now let's try with my special numbers here. So if we want to write my special numbers here, we will delete this. Let's actually delete this, my car names, and now we will enter the print my special numbers. Let's print a number 65. In order to print a 65 here, we will enter the index of the 65, 3. So remember, index starts from 0 here. And here, as you can see here, we printed 65. So that's the answer you will get here. So this is the result you want your users to see. Clean, neatly formatted output. So you can also use the strings methods in this. Let's actually delete this here. And let's make the print car makes, the car makes dot, you can also use string method. For example, car makes dot, we will use the uppercase. Car makes dot, first we will enter the, for example, 1, index 1, and upper here. Now you will see this. As you can see, BMW started with uppercase, but BMW was uppercase actually. So instead of this, let's try with Hyundai here. So 0 here, let's count this. So this is 0, 0, BMW 1, index Volkswagen 2, index of Honda is 3, index of Kia is 4, and Hyundai is 5. That's it. So we will enter the 5 here inside the square braces, and now let's run it. And as you can see here, we've written Hyundai in upper cases, and this example produces the this output here. So we can and keep in mind that index positions start at 0 and not 1. So I want to write this here because I want to the new programmers can sometimes be mistaken about the index position starting point here. So index oops, actually let's write with text here. So index positions start at 0 and not 1. That's it. Keep in mind this word here. Index positions start at 0 and not 1. That's it. Here. Now, a Python considers the first item in a list to be at a position of 0 and not position 1. So this is true for most programming languages, and the reason has to do with how the list operations are implemented at lower level. So if you're receiving unexpected results, ask yourself if you are making a simple but common off by 1 error. So the second item in the list has an index of 1, right? Index of 1. And using this counting system, you can get any element you want from a list by subtracting 1 from its position in the list. So for instance, to access the fourth item in the list, you request the item or index at 0, right? 1, 3. So if you are, so the Honda is actually the fourth item in this list, but in order to access them, we will use 3 here. So now we will, let's run this with again, and here, and as you can see, we got Honda here. So Python has a special syntax for accessing the last element in a list. If you ask for the item at index -1, Python always returns the last item in the list. So here, and as you can see here, Hyundai was the last item in our list. So here, let's actually do this. -1 returns -1 always returns the last item in the list here. Also keep in mind this. So that's it. Oops, sorry, not like this. -1 always returns the last item in the list. That's it. So this code here, as you can see, it returned Hyundai, and this syntax is quite useful because you will often want to access the last items in a list without knowing exactly how long the list is. So this convention extends to other negative index values as well. For example, -2 returns the second item from the end of the list, and -3 returns the third item in the end of the list, and so forth. So you can also use the individual values from a list. So you can use individual values from a list just as you would any other variable. For example, you can use f strings to create a message based on a value from a list. So let's try pulling the first our car model from the list and composing a message that uses that value. So now here we will do this. Print. Let's make the we will use the f here, and now my first car was let's say BMW here, and we will use this braces, but BMW, so car makes that 1 because the BMW index has 1, and we will use this, for example, title, right? And here my first car was a BMW. The syntax for modifying an element is similar to the syntax for accessing an element in a list. To change an element, you can use the name of the list followed by the index of the element you want to change, and then provide a new value you want that item to have. For example, let's say we have a list of car makers, and the first item in the list is BMW, right? So let's make the car makers here, and we will create the 5 or 3 items here, so it will easy to print on the screen. So Honda or BMW here firstly, and then Honda, and then for example like Kia, right? Or Ford. Yes, Ford. That's it. And here we will print the car makers. That's it. And as BMW, Honda, Ford, there is nothing weird in here, right? We didn't change anything or manipulate anything. Now we will write, for example, this car makers from index 0. We will change BMW to Jeep or Dodge here. And as you can see here, we will firstly write print this. And as you can see here, we changed BMW to Dodge, and our new list of car makers doesn't have the BMW inside it. So here we define the list of car makers with BMW as a first element, and then we change the value of the first item to Dodge. And the output shows that the first item has been changed while the rest of the list stays the same. You can change the value of any item in a list, not just the first item. Just remember here. So let's do the same to here. And as you can see here, we changed Ford here to Dodge. And you can also add an element to a list, and you might want to add a new element to a list for many reasons, right? For example, you might want to make a new car makers, add a new data to visualizations, or add a new registered users to a website you build. So Python provides several ways to add a new data to existing lists, and the simplest way to add a new element to a list is to append the item to the list. So when you append an item to a list, the new element is added at the end of the list, and using the same list we had in a previous example, we will add the new element. We will add a new element, for example, Jeep, to our end of the list. So car makers dot append Jeep here, and after that we will print the car makers, and that's it. And here, as you can see here, we added Jeep here. So here we append methods adds Jeep to the end of the list without affecting any other elements in the list. And the append method makes it easy to build the list dynamically. For example, you can start with an empty list and then add items to the list using a series of append calls. Let's do this here. For example, car makers, and here we will create the empty list here, and car makers that append BMW, car makers that append Honda here. Here let's append Jeep here. Append Jeep, and here we will also append the Ford. That's it. Also, of course, we need to print it to show you, and that's it. We created list from 0, and this resulting will look exactly the same as the list in the previous examples, but we changed a little bit here because as you remember, the Jeep was at the last and Ford was firstly here. That's okay. Here a building list this way is very common because you often won't know the data your users want to store in a program until after the program is running. So to put users in control, start defining an empty list that will hold the user's values, and then append each new value provided to the list you just created. Now you can also insert elements to the list. So you can add a new element at any position in your list by using the insert method. So you can do this by specifying the index of the new element and the value of the new item. So we'll create a car makers to don't confuse you, and car makers, and we will make it the BMW, or let's start with Honda. It doesn't make any difference for now because it's variable. So BMW, Honda, and let's make it the Volkswagen, and Jeep here. Let's Fiat here, and Opel here, Saab. That's it. That's okay. That's enough here. So you can add a new element to any position in your list, as I said, by using the insert method. So you do this by specifying the index of the new element and the value of the new item. So for example, car makers here, car makers dot insert. So here we will insert 0. So let's find the new Mercedes here, right? Or let's use some Japanese cars, in this case Lexus. And here we will print the car makers now. And here, as you can see, we changed the Honda to Lexus. But instead, you remember, here we didn't change the Honda here. Honda is still appears here, but we added Lexus here. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items. So we added Lexus at the start of the list. So in this example, we insert the Lexus at the beginning of the list, and the insert method opens a page at position 0 and stores the value the Lexus at that location. So this operation shifts every other value in the list by one position to the right. Here, sorry, like, let's get this pen. So here BMW was 3 here. Oops, let's actually get my pen here and make it proper color. Yes. So Honda was 0, BMW was 1, Volkswagen 2, Jeep 3, Fiat 4, Opel 5, and Saab was 6 item in that has 6 index of the list. And here since we added Lexus here, Lexus now is 0, Honda is 1, BMW is 2, Volkswagen is 3, Jeep is 4, Fiat is 5, and Opel is 6. Lastly, that's because we added one item at the start of the list here, and we have the 7 on the sub. So as I said, the this operation shifts every other value in the list one position to the right. We can also remove element from a list. So often you will want to remove an item or set of items from a list. For example, when a player shoots down an alien from the sky, you will most likely want to remove it from the list of active aliens, or when a user decides to cancel their account on a web application you created, and you will want to remove that user from the list of active users. So you can remove an item according to its position in the list or according to its value. Now, if you know the position of the item you want to remove from a list, you can use del statement like this. So we will first print the car makers to make sure what we changed in this list, and we will del here car makers 0. That's it. And after that we will print our car makers. Print car makers. And as you can see here we use a del statement to remove the first item, which is BMW, from the list of car makers. So you can remove an item from any position in a list using the del statement if you know its index. For example, here's how to remove a second item. BMW, or yes, here we remove the Honda here, but in this case we will remove the remove the third item. In this case we will enter the Q, and as you can see here we removed the Volkswagen. So now the third item is deleted from the list. In both examples you can no longer access the value that was removed from the list after the del statement is used. Sometimes you will want to use the value of an item after removing it from a list. For example, you might want to get the A and B position of an alien that was just shot down, so you can draw an explosion at that position and so on. So in a web application you might want to remove a user from a list of active members and then add that user to a list of inactive members. So the pop method removes the last item in a list, but it lets you work with the item after removing it. The term pop comes from the thinking of the list as a stack of items and popping one item off the top of the stack. So in this analogy, the top of stack corresponds to the end of the list. So let's pop sap and from the list of car makers. Now we will make this, for example, this, right? So popped car, and here we will enter the car makers dot pop here. That's it. And after that we will print the popped firstly car makers, and after that we will print the popped car. That's it. And here we start by defining and printing the our car makers, and then we pop a value from the list with this here, as you can see here. Absolutely. Let me actually adjust my mouse speed. Less. So now I will explain all of this now. So firstly, we define the list of the car models here, car makers. Car makers, and then we print it. So after that, we pop a value from the list and assign that value to popped car. In this case, our popped car is equals to sap here because we popped sap here and nothing else. And after that, we are printing our car makers, which is here at the second here. And as you can see here, we don't have sap here. And after that, we are printing our popped car here, which is here. Sap. That's it. So then we print the popped value, and to prove that we still have access to that value that was removed. So the output shows that the value sap was removed from the end of the list and is now assigned to a variable named popped car. And remember, this is not a list, this is just a variable, this regular string variable. So how might this pop method be useful? So imagine that the car makers in the list are stored in chronological order according to when we own them, right? If this is the case, we can use the pop method to print a statement about the last car model we bought, car maker we bought, right? So we can also use this. Now we will, since we pop the car, now we will print a car maker. After that we will print a popped car, and we will add another print, which we will use the format, right, as we used in previous year. The last car maker or car model that Typhoon owned is and last. So here popped car, or actually let's change this here to last owned car here, and pop last owned car. That's it. The output is simple sentence about the recent and last owned car model we had here. In this case it was sap. You can use pop to remove an item from any position in a list by including the index of the item you want to remove inside the parentheses. So for example, let's make this here. So this is the 0, and we will change it to first owned. So here first owned car, and here first owned car. And remember, the firstly here our first owned car variable was sap, right? It's because of this, when we use the pop method without any parameters inside this, we will get the last item. And here we will enter the 0 index here, and as you can see here, we got Honda here. So remember that each time you use pop, the item you work with is no longer stored in the list. So if you're unsure whether to use the del statement or pop method, here's a simple way to decide. So when you want to delete an item from a list and not use that item in any way, you can use the del statement. So, but if you want to use an item as you remove it, you can use the pop method. You can also remove an item by a value. So sometimes you want to know the position of the value you want to remove from a list. So if you only know the value of item you want to remove, you can use remove method like this. Remove. So here, for example, say we want to remove the BMW from the list of car makers. We will do this BMW here. That's it. And now we will enter here, and as you can see, none here, but here we removed BMW because we cannot save this. Watch here, we removed, and here let's actually we can delete this now, and as you can see here, we removed BMW. So you can also use the remove method to work with the value that's being removed from a list, but let's remove the value of the Jeep and print a reason for removing it from the list. So now first we are printing the raw car makers without any manipulation, and after that let's too expensive here, expensive, and here we have Jeep here, and now car makers start remove too expensive here and print car makers, and after that we will print this some formatted text here. So first we will write in Jeep, so in this case too expensive, that title is removed, so is too expensive for me. That's it. Here you can see here Jeep is too expensive for me, and we removed Jeep from our list. After deciding the list here, let's actually explain this code one by one. So after defining the list, we assign the value Jeep to a variable called too expensive. So when we use this variable to tell Python which value to remove from the list, and here let's actually, I need my marker now to draw some things on the screen, and here. So here we used this value here. We used this value to remove Jeep here. So the value Jeep has been removed from the list here, but it's still like accessible through the variable too expensive, right? So allowing us to print a statement about why we removed Jeep from the list of car makers. Often, your lists will be created in an unpredictable order, because you can't always control the order in which your users provide their data, right? So although this is unavoidable in most circumstances, you will frequently want to present your information in a particular order. Sometimes you will want to preserve the original order of your list, and other times you will want to change the original order. So Python provides a number of different ways to organize your list depending on the situations. We can also sort a list permanently with a sort method. Now let's create a new list here. Let's cars, and it's going to be BMW here, cars, BMW, Audi here, Jeep, Jeep here, again Toyota, and Kia, Honda. And here, so Python sorts method makes it relatively easy to sort a list. Imagine we have a list of cars that we write here, and we want to change the order of list to store them alphabetically. To keep the task simple, let's assume that all the values in the list are lowercase, and here we will use the cars.sort here, and that's it. And after that we will print this here, and print cars. So here the sort method changed the order of the list permanently, and the cars are now in an alphabetical order, and we can never revert the original order here. So you can also sort this list in reverse alphabetical order by passing the argument reverse true here, like this. So we pass the argument this reverse true to the sort method, and now this will gives us a reverse order here, but again it will sort our list. So again, the order of the list is permanently changed. So the sorting a list is temporarily with a sorted function. So we can also sort the list temporarily with the sorted function. So let's try this now. So to maintain the original order of the list but present it in a sorted order, you can use the sorted function. The sorted function lets you display your list in particular order, but it doesn't affect the actual order of the list. Let's try this function on list of our cars that we created here: BMW, Audi, Jeep, Toyota, Kia, and Honda. Now we will print here. This is our original list here, and after that we will print the cars, and after that we will print again. This is a here. Let's actually use the new line. So this is a sorted list, and after that we will print the sorted cars here, and after that we will print the list again. This is our original list. That's it. Here now I will explain this code one by one. So we first print the list in its original order here, and then in alphabetical order here. After the list is displayed in a new order, we show that the list is still stored in its original order here. Sorry for that. Let's add the print cars here again. As you can see here, these are the two same original orders. So after presenting it in sorting it out, even we can use the original owner of the list. So here, notice that the list still exists in its original order, and after the sorted function has been used, the sorted function can also accept reverse true here, and argument if you want to display a list in reverse alphabetical order. And sorting a list alphabetically is a bit more complicated when all the values are not in lowercase. So there are several ways to interpret capital letters when determining a sort order, and specify the exact order can be more complex than we want to deal with at this time. However, most approaches to sorting will build directly on what you learned in this section. To reverse the original order of a list, you can use this reverse method. So if we were originally stored the list of cars in chronological order according to when we owned them, we could easily rearrange the list into reverse chronological order like this. For example, let's delete here and print cars firstly, and after that we will cars.reverse here, and after that we will print the cars again. So notice that the reverse doesn't sort backward alphabetically, it simply reverses the order of a list. So here we have Honda 1 first here, Kia second, Toyota third, Jeep fourth, Audi fifth, and BMW last year in sixth. This is how reverse method works. So the reverse method changed the order of list permanently, but you can revert the original order anytime by applying the reverse again, right? Like logic here. And as you can see here, we apply the reverse second time, and we have the original list, original order. So we can find the length of a list as well. So you can quickly find the length of a list by using the len function. So now firstly use this print len here, and after that we will enter our list. And here, as you can see, we have 6 items. 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 items here. We have 6 items here. And you will find len useful when you need to identify the number of aliens that still need to be shut down in a game. Determine the amount of data that you have to manage in visualization, and or figure out the number of registered users on a website, among other tasks. So Python counts the items in a list starting with 1, so you shouldn't run into any off by 1 errors when determining the length of a list. And also you should avoid the index errors when working with a list here. So there's one type of error that's common to see when you are working with a list for the first time. So let's say you have a list with 3 items here. Let's actually, instead of BMW, Audi, and Jeep, right? So you have a list of 3 items, BMW, Audi, and Jeep. If you let's delete this as well. If it print the 3 here, this example will give us an index error. So Python attempts to give you the item at index 3, but when it searches the list, no item in cars has an index of 3. Because of this off by 1 nature of indexing in lists, this error is typical, and people think the third item is item number 3 because they start counting at 1. But in Python, the third item number is 2 because it starts from the 0. It starts from 0, 1, and 2. So there's a no thing in this list such as 3, right? So if you want to reach the last item, you should enter 2 instead of 3. Okay, that's why we got the list index out of range error. So an index error means Python can't find an item at the index you requested. So if an index error occurs in your program, try adjusting index you are asking for by 1. So then run the program again to see if the results are correct. And here keep in mind that whenever you want to access the last item in a list, you should use the index -1, and this will always work even if your list has changed size since the last time you accessed it. So the index -1 always returns the last item in a list. In this case, the value is Jeep here. And the only time this approach will cause an error is when you request the last item from an empty list. And as you can see here, list index out of range. And here we have no items in cars for now, so Python returns another index error. If an index error occurs and you can figure out how to resolve it, try printing your list or just printing the length of your list, and your list might look much different than you thought it did, and especially it has been managed dynamically by your program. And seeing the actual list or the exact number of items in your list can help you sort out such logical errors. So in this section you learned what lists are, how to work with the individual items in a list. You learned how to define a list and how to add and remove elements. You learned how to sort lists permanently and temporarily for display purposes. You also learned how to find the length of a list and how to avoid index errors when you are working with lists.